realistic, practical, and concrete. High SE users have a reputation for discounting or ignoring the abstract. This isn't the case at all, in my experience. It's simply that they have a preference for the tangible. And to be honest, that's by far the most sensible and pragmatic way to approach life. When it comes to being ideational or talking about the abstract, they tend to see that kind of thing as purposeless speculation. If it has a purpose and a use, they'll do it, and will often do it very well. One of the stereotypical descriptions of SE users is that they like working with their hands. Obviously, that's not going to be accurate in any kind of significant way. However, I do understand the stereotype because it's a good example of activities that have this immediacy to them. I can take action and get a response. I can push or pull on something in real time and affect it, as opposed to pondering something for many hours, then spending weeks planning it in the hope of some potential payoff down the line. SE is often about minimizing the distance between action and outcome. This is also why there's the stereotype of high SE users being sports people. Sport allows you to act in the moment and get real-time results. Not just act, but to react and adapt on the fly, which is something that they love to do. Everyone wants to put themselves in a position where they have some kind of competitive advantage. If you're someone who knows that when a crisis occurs, when things are plunged into chaos, you can shine, then certain fields or professions that allow that are going to appeal to you. Another misconception is that this means they can't do long-term planning. That's not the case. They just don't like conjecturing or these very tenuous, wide-ranging plans in the absence of actual action. If they can see the steps in a long-term plan and agree with them, then they'll be as good as any other type. Actually, sometimes they can be better because they'll actually carry out the plan. The here and now. This is what I consider to be one of the superpowers of SE. There's a part of the Last Dance documentary where Michael Jordan is asked about the sheer pressure he experiences and the fact that he knows at some point in the future it's going to fall to him to make the game-winning shot or game-saving shot. He was asked about whether it gets to him, whether it worries him or keeps him up at night. He responded by saying, "Why would I worry about a shot I haven't taken yet?" That struck me as one of the most SE lines and ideas. I might actually do a video at some point reacting to Michael Jordan's personality, and no surprises, I think he's a high SE user, but it shows that he's not thinking about or worrying about future possibilities in maybe in any kind of way. He's not planning things out precisely and obsessively, over planning or waiting for the right moment too much in the way that NI can. He's not ruminating on the past in the way that SI can. He's in the present moment, which is hard to do. I've said in the past that it shouldn't even be an aspiration for certain types because it would take away their strength. Some types need to plan and shouldn't live in the moment, but this SE capacity to do just that, to live in the moment, is deeply powerful. As the famous Stoic philosopher Seneca said, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Most of the stuff we worry about never comes to pass, and even if it does, the way in which we worry about it isn't that helpful most of the time. The higher your SE, the higher your ability to live in the moment effectively. Other types can achieve this, intuitive types can achieve it, but it often takes something for them to get there. Maybe meditation or mindfulness. For high SE users, it comes very naturally to the point where they can almost sometimes be surprised that it's even a desirable thing. To them, it should be the norm. The advantage of it is simple. You have focus on the task at hand without being pulled in 100 different directions. Now, I know that there are probably high SE types thinking, hang on a minute, I'm not focused. I get distracted all the time. Yes, that's true, but when they need to hone in on something, when the stakes are high, SE users very rarely get overwhelmed by the situation. Whereas they could get easily bored and distracted and interested in loads of things, when it matters, they can get that kind of tunnel vision where they go into action hero mode, forcefulness and energy. This isn't really something that's implied by the description of the function itself, but it's definitely an extremely consistent trend I've noticed. High SE users, and also ENTJs and ENFJs that have SE in their third slot, just bring this level of energy with them. Sometimes it's like potential energy. With an ISTP, for example, they could be very chilled and relaxed, which they often are, but you get this sense they could spring into action at any point. With the SE DOMs, so ESTPs and ESFPs, this can show up in a more literal way. It's kind of hard to ignore them in a room, for better or worse. Either it's because they're actively moving around a lot, or they're just finding a way to draw attention to themselves. Not always intentionally, but sometimes intentionally. ESTP and ESFP. These two types are the embodiment of this function. They're instinctive, energetic, forceful, and capable of adapting and reacting in all manner of situations. By definition, they're going to have NI as their inferior function. And as a result, I've noticed that in order to think about the future, they'll often express notions of fate, destiny, having some mission or calling. I've always thought of that as a way for them to simplify this NI calculation. Whereas high NI users will happily plan far into the future, perhaps too far, for ESFPs and ESTPs, INTJs, they tend to dislike this and are quite skeptical of it. So instead they use their NI more like a compass to point them in a general direction in life. That can align with their values, their preferences, and their logic. ISTP and ISFP. These types use SE as a tool, and as a result, could be thought of as the most effective SE users, in the sense that they can use it powerfully without being imbalanced by it. SE can be something they use in an expressive way, often in a way that reflects or serves their dominant function. Both of these types are going to be great at the stereotypical SE kinds of things, the physical, artistic, and kinesthetic, but they have a balance with NI, so they're going to be able to blur the lines between being sensing and intuitive types, and may mistype as such. They're still going to have a strong preference for living in the moment and taking things one day at a time. ENFJ and ENTJ. These two types can dip into their SE when needed, and also use it as a source of relief. As a result, they can counterbalance their planning abilities and natural, structured approach to life with being adaptable and receptive to changes in the moment. They're more than happy to indulge in the physical and sensual aspects of life, just like the 4 types mentioned previously, and get great satisfaction from doing so. They can actually overindulge in this function from time to time, and that might be flaunting their worldly possessions, having extravagant taste, or simply being on the gluttonous side of life. INTJ and INFJ. These two types have an imbalanced relationship with SE. This can manifest in many different ways, including being out of touch with their physical environment and feeling detached from it, sometimes being overly in their heads and theorizing without obtaining enough sensory data and seeking out new information. In a phrase, being overly intuitive. These types might struggle to deal with chaotic situations. Even though they tend to be effective at planning their way out of them, they don't like the feeling of being in chaos, of things changing around from moment to moment. They desire more structure, more stability, or certainty. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and please check out the links below, which include a Discord server, our Patreon, website, and individual social media links, such as an Instagram, blog, TikTok, and so on.